One right here. Brief History of Time by Stephen W. Hawking. I listened to the audiobook version of this. I started out reading the ebook, and I had trouble staying interested. And then I came across the audiobook, and I figured that would at least give my eyes a rest. And the audiobook is read by Michael Jackson. That's right, the king of pop himself, Michael Jackson. No, it's a different Michael Jackson. Believe it or not, for like a short while, I actually thought it was the Michael Jackson. I think that would have been cool, though, right? I mean, I don't even know if Michael Jackson ever narrated any kind of audiobook or something, or that would have been cool. I feel like that would have held my interest a lot more in this. I mean, not that I wasn't at least interested in it to begin with, because I had always wanted to read it, and I will say I'm glad that I finally did, even though I read like a portion of the ebook and then the rest of it I listened to via audiobook. And I will admit, there's only like maybe, I don't know, a certain percentage of this that I understood. The rest of it, I gotta admit, just went right over my head. There's a lot of stuff about the Big Bang Theory, not the TV show. There's an actual theory about the Big Bang in which, different scientists, believe that it explains how the universe was created, and in which there was just this burst of energy and matter, and then eventually, like, it slowly started to coalesce. I believe that's the right word. And eventually that's how the stars formed, and galaxies and planets, solar systems, all that good stuff. Or bad stuff, depending on, I guess, if you're a optimist or pessimist. But I did find, the parts that I didn't understand, it actually made me think a lot. Like, actually made me ponder certain things for, I want to say, like, more than a couple hours. One thing I did like, that I found, I think, the most interesting was there's a part in which he kind of talks about the fact that, as human beings, we like to believe that everything has a beginning, middle, and end. And Stephen Hawking essentially wrote about that. He believes this can't always be applied. It can't be applied to everything, especially when you're trying to understand certain things, such as the creation of the universe, or the creation of time and space. So he believes that you can't really think of something like the creation of the universe as having a beginning, middle, and end, or at least certainly not a beginning or end. In other words, he kind of puts forth this, I would say, kind of like side theory, or, it doesn't really go into great detail, but just kind of mentions that it is very possible that the creation of the universe didn't have an exact beginning, or even probably, it is possible that it didn't have a beginning at all. And kind of like, he believes that it's possible that, well, of course, first of all, he also believes that time itself doesn't necessarily have to have a beginning and an end. Time is like a constant cycle, and just with different reference points, I guess. Of course, I would say, like, he even mentions that this wouldn't even be accurate, but it's kind of like it's the easiest way to explain something like this to the lay person, to people who don't really, for those of us who aren't physicists and scientists of any kind. So essentially, time is this never-ending cycle, and there's just different reference points, and in all these different points are pretty much the different, I guess you could say, life cycles, kind of like cycles within cycles, and such as, say, like the time period we're living in now here on Earth. We're all a part of one particular cycle here on Earth, and which is ultimately just part of a much bigger cycle, you could say, a much bigger cycle, life cycle of the solar system we're a part of, also the galaxy we're a part of, ultimately the universe we're a part of, and also too, very, very likely, an even bigger cycle that could quite possibly supersede the universe we live in, possibly even beyond whatever other universes may or may not exist. I know that could seem like a very hard thing to ponder, but I guess for me, like, it's something that, something that even before I actually read this or listened to this audiobook, I had actually somewhat thought about before, pondered a little bit before. And so while, it was still hard for me to imagine, I was still already kind of familiar with it. So, because I guess, I've always been that kind of person that, sometimes, like, if I'm really interested in something, whether it's an idea, a theory, sometimes I do tend to overanalyze it and think about it a lot, to the point, just until I get tired of thinking about it. And it's kind of like how I've always been, I believe, even when I was a little kid. And obviously when I was a kid, I had no idea what philosophy was, or physics, but no, sometimes, I would get obsessed with different things like cartoons and action figures, comic books, and, and even when, like, I wouldn't, like, if I wasn't reading a particular comic book, it was like I would still kind of think about it, all day long. Like, I would think about different characters of a comic book or in a cartoon that I recently saw, and so, but I digress. It's, I don't know. I guess I bring that up because most of what Stephen Hawking mentions in this book kind of remind me of that. Like, it's kind of like his own. It's like a collection of the things that he thinks about and obsesses about on a daily basis, and which is kind of cool. I consider it to be pretty cool. Although obviously I know that not everybody tends to think in the same way, and but still, as I consider it to be fascinating, interesting, intriguing. I figure, there's got to at least be, granted, like, you figure most of mankind, most of the human race, we're all hustling and bustling, struggling to live every day just to try to eke out our own space within this otherwise messed up reality. It's and yeah, obviously most of us don't have time to ponder certain things, or or even bother to try to understand certain things. But that's why there's people like Stephen Hawking, other physicists like him. Neil deGrasse Tyson is another one that came to mind for me while I was listening to this. Of course, I do realize that Stephen Hawking wrote this way before, I think, definitely way before Neil deGrasse Tyson wrote or published anything. But I don't know, I've always considered it to be very fun and interesting and intriguing. It definitely brought up a lot of interesting things for me. Some stuff like I can't even like really still wrap my mind around, but I feel like I might be able to wrap my mind around them, like maybe in another couple of years or so. It's, I mean, I do feel like there was like a portion of this that to me it wasn't anything new, because I had already read about in previous books, and also pretty much seen other people talk about other physicists, such as, like I mentioned, Neil deGrasse Tyson. There's also another physicist I like, his name's Michio Kaku. That's another guy too. I should definitely read and review some of his stuff too. I read some of his stuff before, but it's been a while since the last time I did. I think Michio Kaku has a new book coming out, in fact. So, yeah. And his stuff is always like, he's able to explain a lot of complicated things in a very easy to comprehend kind of way. So, yeah. I think like with Stephen Hawking, as far as when he wrote this, I think it was more like he wasn't too concerned about trying to dumb it down for people, or which I can understand to a certain extent. And I mean, yeah, overall it's like as far as the rating goes, I guess I would give it a 4 out of 5 stars, just because I like that it made me think a lot. And I do believe that, if you like books and about physics and creation of the universe and a lot of theoretical stuff, then no doubt you'll probably like this. Otherwise, I would say, yeah, you probably won't like it. But I think that pretty much do it for my review. It's like I said, there's a lot of stuff in it, other stuff too that I found just as interesting too, stuff about black holes and the life cycle of stars, life cycle of galaxies, and also the whole expansion of the universe, the fact that our universe is what Stephen Hawking believes in. I guess a lot of other physicists too believe that our universe is expanding. It's constantly expanding, stretching out, I guess, is the easiest way to understand it. And that eventually it's possible that it will get to a point where it'll expand so much that it'll essentially like just collapse, and during that collapse nobody knows what'll happen, or because I mean by then obviously it's very likely that the human race will no longer exist. It could even be likely that there'll be very little signs of life by that point throughout the universe. Of course, that's just a theory. It's not, it's not set in stone or anything. It's But yeah, overall, I mean, again, I give it 4 out of 5 stars, so that'll do it. I don't want to ramble on and on too much about some of these theories. But yeah, that'll do it for my review of Brief History of Time by Stephen Hawking. So thanks for watching, thanks for listening. As always, till next time, don't forget, keep it real, keep on rocking, and peace.